Hi, I'm Tim of the 1916 Company, announcing our all-new 1916 Company app. Check out our all-new community features, including wrist time, where you can log the watch you wear, how often you wear your watches, and see a graphical representation of how you use your collection. But wait, there's more, because this wrist time feature allows you to post in real time to our live feed of user wrist shots. Our community functions also include professionally moderated discussions, all sorts of views, debate, insights into what people want to say about the watches of our times, and all your favorite features are coming back, including media, editorial from Jack Forster, video from yours truly. You can continue to build your online collection and your wish list, plus all the commercial features are back. Buy, trade, and sell through the app, browse our global inventory of pre-owned and new watches. A wrist shot could begin the process of a trade or a purchase. Find the 1916 Company app on the Apple App Store and Google.
Hello and welcome to the 1916 Company podcast. I'm Tim Masso here with Armand Johnston, and we are discussing our shopping list. You guys know I recently acquired my Grail watch, the de Bethune DBD. I got the model, the generation, the case metal, even the dial variant I wanted. A lot of people see the Grail as the end, the exit watch, the capstone and finality, but I don't see it that way. It will be my Grail forever. It will always be the flagship of the fleet, but there will be other ships in the caravan. So today, Armand and I are going to discuss what is on our shopping list right now, and if we view the acquisitions as one for ones or one for twos, we're even going to talk about what watches we might trade out of the collection to make it happen. So Armand, what is on your shopping list right now?
Yeah, so, I have been going back and forth for a long time on pieces that I want to add here and there, and I've been in homeostasis with my collection now for quite some time, and it's a great place to be, guys. I'm in sales. I sell watches. I like to sell watches. I like getting new watches. I like getting people new watches. Living in your collection is a blast, but I will say, over the past 4 to 6 weeks, I have allowed my brain to wander a little. I have allowed myself to think, what would it be like to have a full collection again, so to speak, of a few pieces? So we were talking a little bit before the podcast started. There is a Patek Philippe Calatrava, the 3796 SG. There's one on Chrono 24 right now. So this is a very classic time sub-seconds Calatrava, manual wind,
In the tradition of the 96.
In almost a carbon copy of the 96, just a little bit larger. And it is fantastic. It is roughly 30 millimeters. This piece in particular is in white gold.
And that's not a lady's watch. That's a traditionally sized 96.
Absolutely. And it really does fit much better than you think it's going to as well because of the kind of outreaching lugs. And I think the overall design of the watch lends itself to a very vintage-inspired feel, which lends me to a very vintage-inspired wear. So something like this, I think, is, and everywhere from casual to black tie, potentially. And just a little manual wind dress watch is something that's so cool. It kind of never goes out of style. It never really changes. And, it never goes out of style because it's never firmly in style. And I really like that.
That's a really great watch, too. A lot of people don't know about the 3796.
Yeah, and it's relatively affordable from a Calatrava standpoint. These, without special dials or case variations, these are in the mid-teens, give or take.
Yeah, and that happens to be the case with almost all smaller Patek Philippe watches, like smaller scale watches from the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, whether it's the reference 5000, whether it's something like the 3796, the 5034, these smaller Pateks that are substantially under 36 millimeters, they're men's watches, but that size doesn't play in the modern market, so it's really a buyer's space if you're interested.
Well said.
Okay, so for me, it's a really weird watch. A lot of people know my collecting ambitions, so I'm going to try to stay away from pieces you know well, like, for example, the Zenith Captain Windsor Annual Calendar Boutique Edition Palladium Dial, or the Ball Engineer 2 Magneto S. You've heard a lot about that. What you probably haven't heard about is that I really like the Gerald Genta by Retro Jump Hours over the years. And there was a period in the early 2010s when the Gerald Genta brand looked like it was going away, and Bulgari had announced that it would fold Gerald Genta and Daniel Rolt into Bulgari watchmaking, first with co-branded watches, and then eventually phasing out the old names. Well, around 2014, when FIFA was holding the World Cup in Brazil, I realized there was a version of the Biretro Jump Hour that finally resonated enough that it got on my radar. So I'd love to own one of the 2000s era Arena Biretros, but I really dug the Bulgari Octo Biretro Brazil World Cup. So a steel watch with a ceramic bezel, 43 millimeters with the Octo case. Not Octo Finissimo, but the Octo case. And it has this incredible Champlevé lacquer dial. You've got these half dozen layers of colored and clear lacquer applied, cured, and hand polished, but they scooped out the dials. They dug the channels just like you do with Champlevé enamel. You dig out all the little wells that create the sectors and shapes and forms of the dial. So it is Champlevé hand lacquer dial with a retrograding minute, retrograding date, a jumping hour, all of this with a beautiful Gerald Genta module atop a Girard Perregaux automatic base with a potter's gold finish, which is really nice. It's like all engine turning with gold. So it's a real high horology movement to match the high horology module. And this watch is 100 meters water resistant, so there's not much I don't love here. Rare watch, though. Only 50 pieces made, and they are hard to find. I don't think we've had one for quite some time.
It has been a while.
It was a very cool watch, though, and I remember that well. It just fit me. Big watch, but it just fit.
I remember you bringing this watch up, Tim, on one of the first times we shared camera together, back at the old Walnut Street set, maybe in 2016 or early 2017. And I think we even had one at the time. And this watch is very, very cool. You know, from my perspective, I love the colors. I think, a double retrograde is amazing. Jump hour is super cool. And, you mentioned the case. The Octo case is interesting, right? It is a little bit less refined than the Octo Finissimo, yet it still has such Bulgari character. This represents a time of Bulgari that was almost just as interesting as the current Octo Finissimo time. They were putting complications in this case. They were making various versions of this watch, and it was doing all right at the time. It was selling pretty well at the time.
Yeah, this is a watch that represents a thread of history that's more backward-looking than forward-looking, because this was originally a Gerald Genta branded product with no Bulgari co-branding. The variant, which is beautiful, resplendent in white, yellow, green, and blue Brazilian colors, it's a really striking watch, as much for the color as for all of its other qualities. That's why I would say, for example, that I want this version of it rather than one of the purely Genta branded versions. I also love the titanium Arena Biretros from the 2000s because those were also highly water resistant, and the titanium case is quite versatile. It's big, it wears big, the Arena Biretro, but they're nice watches. And I liked the wacky Genta without Genta designs of the 2000s, like the Gerald Rodin era. Those were really cool pieces. So I just like those Gerald Genta watches built mostly after 2000. So those are fun to me. Really nice watches, and I think at the end of the day, one of those things you buy because it's cool, not so much because this will ever be worth any money.
Yeah, this is a buy to wear, buy to enjoy, and it is cool. It's also... This is something we say often when talking about when talking to collectors who have maybe eccentric tastes. This is the type of watch that, you walk into almost any room, nobody else has this.
Yeah, that's a fact. The other thing, too, is that with these watches, even though they're not super expensive, you're going to get that same experience you would get if you were a guy with a subscription series Journe Tourbillon. No one you know is going to have it. No one in your watch club, no one at your Red Bar, probably even no one on your Facebook group. So you do get that fun level of exclusivity that entails being able to explain your watch to every new person you encounter, which is a lot of fun. So highly recommended if you're out there and you like stuff that's weird, check these out. What else is on your list, Armand?
So I'm going to go into slightly dangerous territory here. This is a watch that I've been looking at for quite some time, and It's a little bit off center of the normal for this brand. This is our friends with the crown. This is the Rolex Prince, and this is the reference 5440/8. So the yellow gold one. You know, there are certain things about this watch: the Clos de Paris on the dial, the Clos de Paris on the movement, the sun ray motif on the flanks. I won't spend too much time on it, but I really, really recommend people take a look, because this is a beautiful and hand-finished Rolex.
Oh, yes, and a display case-back manual-wind Rolex watch, their first ever. Okay, so for me, I've always wanted a 50 Fathoms, and my assumption was always that it would be a 50-15. Now, here's the thing about the 50-15. It is a very big watch. It wears small for a 45, but it's still a 45, and I'm right on the limit of whether this is possible. So I want a 50 Fathoms, the titanium version, which I believe came out in 2017, blue dial, titanium case, and critically a brushed finish. So a lot of these over the years, particularly in steel and gold, have been polished, and something that big in high polish is just overpowering. It sort of emerged from the 2000s that way, because big was better and biggest was best back then, and it's a model that came out in 2007, sort of at the height of that. But if I could get the brushed titanium with the blue dial on a sailcloth strap, I'd very seriously consider that. The alternative, and we have one now, is the new reference 5010, which is 42.3, also available in titanium. And that does fit me a little bit better. I think a lot of people are up in arms over the lack of the dial disc that's found on the 5015 dial. And I find this ironic, because that was a styling crutch designed to disguise just how huge the watch was and undifferentiated and vast the dial disc was. So it was a fix for a problem, not some sort of brilliant design flourish. And now that there is a properly proportioned 5010, people are asking, where's the dial disc? And Blancpain's pulling their hair out saying, well, we don't need it anymore. But people expect it so much, they're acting like this is some sort of oversight. It's not. You know, it's like the difference between a Patek 5070 and the 5170. The 5070 was so much bigger than its movement that they needed all sorts of visual gymnastics to disguise that.
They did a great job with it.
They did. I love it. I'd rather have a 5070 than a 5170, especially the yellow gold version. Oh my gosh, what a watch. But, you know, with the 5170, they no longer had a huge disparity between movement size and watch. So it's the same thing with the 5010. Now, I will also say this. On rare occasions, you get a shot at the 50th anniversary, 50 Fathoms. That watch was 40 millimeters and launched back in 2003, so 2003. And it was the 50th anniversary, assuming you by the 1953 launch claim, but that would be the 50th anniversary, and they made 3 sets of 50 for the Americas and Europe and Asia. And so this is a 40 millimeter, 1150 powered Blancpain reference 2200A. It's 40 millimeters in steel, and it introduced the sapphire capped bezel, which became such a fixture of the 50 Fathoms design that it's still with us today. Now, I mean, my goodness.
I can't picture it without.
Yeah, I mean, here we are decades later, and I think people have yet to warm up really to the bathyscaphe with its flat bezel. People think of that cambered sapphire bezel cap, and 22 years later, it's such an iconic look. People forget where it started on those 150 pieces of the limited edition in 2003.
I really like the bathyscaphe, actually. I think it's a different watch to me. Entirely, obviously. It feels more like a blunt instrument, and I like that about it. There's something that is very utilitarian about the handset, about the markers, about the flatness of everything. I mean, the lugs are sharp, the angles are hard, and it feels to me more like a modern dedicated tool watch.
It's a more vintage watch than the 5015. So the bathyscaphe's reference 5000. If you guys are keeping score out in cyberspace, it came out in 2013 in its current form, and it is more vintage. You'll notice the crown is big, but there are no crown guards. The case is relatively narrow, but it's also squared off at the end with a very minimal sort of utilitarian beveling. The bezel is flat. The dial is, although not spare, not as lush as a 5015. So it's designed to be more of a 60s style dive watch look, a 50s style dive watch look, and that no crown guard case is really your clue there. Mechanically, it's always been the same as the 5015, unless you go with a really small one.
What are you mentioned the 50th anniversary. I'm very curious what you feel about the 70th anniversary.
I like it. I don't like it as much.
Yeah.
First of all, it's bigger.
I have, I'm realizing I have a problem with 9-karat gold.
Yeah, I can see that. I can say it's a very vintage look. 7-karat gold, 9-karat gold, 14-karat gold.
It's not necessarily the look. I really like the look.
But here's the thing,
great.
though. There was also a steel model.
Yep, there was.
Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking of. You're thinking...
I'm thinking of the bronze gold model.
Because the bronze gold model was a very different look. It was part of the anniversary series, but the bronze gold, the Tech Gombessa, and the original anniversary series 1, which is steel and kind of like a 5010, they're very different watches, even though they were all anniversary pieces.
I love the way that this bronze gold looks, but I don't... I mean, and this is, the enthusiast in me. It drives me nuts that the brands charge 18-karat pricing for it.
Yeah, I think the only reason that they're charging 18-karat on that is because it's an anniversary piece and a limited edition. But Omega doesn't have the flexibility to raise prices like that. You're talking about something that's, 37.5% gold?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the bronze gold, guys, it's mostly other metals. I like the look, but if you like the look, just get bronze. It's not that different. I don't think most people could tell the difference.
I guess the bronze gold is going to patina less.
Maybe, but do we really know?
We don't know. That is my assumption, because what else are you putting gold in for?
I think just bragging rights. My watch has a hallmark on it. Like, yeah, well, so does my sterling silver Blancpain 58.
They had to dust off the 9-karat gold hallmark.
Yeah, for me, it's not. It's an interesting watch, but you have to want exactly that.
Yeah.
Like, you have to have a mental picture of your perfect 50 Fathoms, and it's this specifically. You don't buy it because, like, ooh, 9-karat gold, or, oh, look, this one's got the squared off lug. Like, you can find that on cheaper watches elsewhere from Omega or other 50 Fathoms, other bathyscaphs. This is just an interesting watch, but it's a hard watch to wear. Whatever the rated size, it wears 2 sizes larger than that.
The lugs are 1.5 miles long.
Yeah. If you're familiar with the recent versions of the Air Command, like that, that's how it fits.
Oh, yeah. Good comparison, actually. That's interesting.
That's how I would describe it. Also important to note, it does seem like there are a lot of 50 Fathoms variants out there, doesn't it?
Oh, my gosh. Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's the commercially adaptable Blancpain.
Yeah, I will say this, though. Historically, in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, there were a billion different versions. So it is very true to the history in that sense.
And almost all of them are sought after and expensive.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that historically, the only 50s that are really going to be worth a lot of money if you're looking at old ones, something with a documented military history or something that has documented an original, basically a watch with the original invoice from the family of the original owner found in the drawer where it was placed 5 minutes after buying it in 1955. I agree with you there. So what else is on your list? What else is on your search list?
So I kind of just continuing in a slightly different trajectory than I usually do. So all the watches I've mentioned so far are strap watches. I'm usually a bracelet guy. The Vacheron Constantin Historique 1921 in 36.5 millimeter. I haven't decided whether or not it's white gold or rose gold. I think it's probably white. But I really like Vacheron's rose, actually. I think it's a really nice rose gold, and I'm generally, with my skin tone, I generally just prefer yellow gold. I think I would lean white gold in this. I like the dial a lot. I just adore the watch, and I prefer the 36.5 millimeter case due to the cushion shape of the watch. I can wear the 40 millimeter version. I just like the smaller version.
I think Vacheron uses 5N red gold. I think that's what you like. It's a very red gold. And not every company does. Like, there are these terms we throw around, pink, rose, red gold. But there are some guidelines for what these things are. From an industry sense, most people would say that 3N is pink, 4N is going to be rose, and then 5N is red. It's like your Rolex Ever Rose, your Panerai Oro Rosso, your Omega Sedna Gold, or your Hublot King Gold, those really red golds. And Vacheron does that, and I like that a lot. Is there a reason you're drawn to the smaller case over the 40?
Yeah, it feels a little bit more classic on the wrist. I don't really. I get that this is the quote unquote driver's watch. That's not why I want it. It's not, that lore doesn't really appeal to me. I do, obviously I like cars and things, but just with this watch, it doesn't really make much sense. I don't know. My wrist is framed correctly by this size.
Yeah, I like that. And I will say this, almost every non-round watch wears a little bit bigger than its rated size. So this definitely has that too. Plus, historically, the models from 1919 and 1921, the kind of Siamese to create the modern American, that was a lot smaller in size than either of these.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the movement, manual wind movement. This has years ago, I read an article. Kari Voutilainen did a takedown of this movement, and he absolutely adored it. He had
the 4400.
The 4400, yes. He had nothing but good things to say, and it was just really interesting. Kari is an interesting figure. The guy has his hands in a lot of pots, yet he is still a remarkably impressive watchmaker. And for somebody to be, to borrow a Indiana Jones quote, giddy as a schoolboy, writing this article about a takedown, it was very cool. It struck me.
Yeah, that he thought it was worth his time to do this.
Yes.
And then second, that it lived up to something approaching his standards. I thought that was impressive. I did see that. I was grateful that he did it, because other than Peter Speakmarin, we don't see a lot of really high-end watchmakers commenting in detail on the inner workings of things they don't make. Yeah, I spoke with Philippe Dufour. I'm like, what do you like? And he's like, oh, I like the new Rolex Pepsi. I'm like, wow.
Yeah, it's cool. And it's one of those things where it's just like, these guys are at the top of their craft, and they're very, very normal in terms of their tastes.
It's not like you ask him, what do you like? And he's like, Rhea. It's not like anything that doesn't meet my standard is garbage. No, and I thought that was pretty cool. What else could I say? Oh, you know what? My shopping list includes some stuff you might not expect. Like, I need a vintage Rado Diastar. I've got to have one because A, I love the way they look, and B, they had the idea decades before ceramic of trying to create a watch that would not scratch. And because they did it in metal, they had to deal with forgings and super high pressure presses and temperatures, and just creating an entire industrial process to make this watch. It's so much more than just a shape and a material. So much went into this in the 60s that to this day, if you find one in a junk drawer, there's not a mark on it. It could be in a drawer full of nails and screwdrivers. There won't be a mark on that thing. And it's very difficult to get into a vintage watch that's not either ripped to shreds from years and wear, or costs a fortune because it wasn't. This will weather the years from a modest but respectable brand. It will look brand new. We put it on your wrist. It's never been polished because it would probably destroy polishing equipment. And this was just such a breakthrough in the 60s and a breath of fresh air as a design and as a concept.
So talk to me about the material. Talk to me about the forging. Tell me about Diastar. This is admittedly a blind spot for me.
Yeah, okay, so the material itself is as hard as ceramic. It is hard metal, and it has to be heated to thousands of degrees and pressed with thousands of pounds.
Are we talking what type of steel?
I believe that, I want to say that this is either tool steel or tungsten carbide. So the Diastar was originally designed as a watch that would not scratch, and it's a timepiece that over the years may have had its mix of alloys changed, but I believe the original material was tungsten carbide, which is exactly what you hear about when you occasionally hear that concept of rods from God proposed by the Pentagon. This idea that if you just drop something off a satellite, by the time it hits the ground, it'll have as much kinetic energy as like a low-yield nuclear weapon.
This G.I. Joe idea?
Yeah, but it's very simple. You just drop a lump of metal off a satellite, in such a fashion that it's going to hit your target. And without any explosives, by the time it gets to the ground, it's going to have so much kinetic energy that it could destroy a bunker hundreds of feet down or create the equivalent of a localized earthquake. But you have to have a material that can withstand that. And so tungsten carbide was the material proposed for this weapon. and it's one of the cooler space-based weapons I've heard of. You know, you hear about ion cannons in video games. You know, Command & Conquer, you can blow up an entire base in Command & Conquer 3 with an ion cannon. And then you hear about it, and you're like, well, it's actually a very weak thing that can damage, like, another satellite. Like, I'm thinking of, like, this giant column of fire from the sky, and then I'm like, oh, it's not actually that. I'm so disappointed. The rods from God thing is exactly what you imagine. You know, this like giant spear, like 20 feet long, that weighs a few thousand pounds. It hits the ground, and it just like sends out a wave like the ground is made of water.
It's this simple, like this you know, keep it simple, stupid type of thing where it's just like, oh yeah, we're just gonna drop this at the right time.
And yeah, I mean, it's just a really cool idea, the Rado Diastar, and there were limits to how they could shape this. That's why all of them look like lentils. But it's a very cool idea that worked. And it was one of the first watches to also get a sapphire crystal, so you wouldn't simultaneously get a scratch-proof case and then a scratched plexi. And the one problem with it early on was that it was just a fingerprint magnet. It still is. So they came with polishing cloths.
That's so funny. This is such a cool pick. You know, this is one of the many reasons why I love doing this podcast, because, you know, I like vintage watches. Guess what? I'm never going to search out a Rado Diastar. Now I am. Now I'm interested to see the weird Rado that somehow has no marks on it in the drawer at the vintage shop, you know?
And I've seen it. Like, we have these abandoned watches at 1916 Watch Repair that we mostly like inherited from the old Goffberg company. People basically who brought in low-value watches, and upon being served the estimate on the service, they just abandoned them. And, you know, that's going to lead to a pile of relatively low-value watches over time. And there was this quartz Diastar in a pile of junk that we had with an estimate and a notice of abandonment. And I could not believe the condition of the case. This watch that was worth nothing didn't have a single scratch, swirl, or scuff. Nothing.
That's insane. I know exactly the pile that you're talking about, and that is insane.
And it had a conventional steel bracelet on it, and the bracelet was decimated and just savaged, and not a mark on the case proper. It was very cool. So I want a Rado Diastar. I'd preferably prefer one of the original designs, but by the 70s, they were making them with shield alarm calibers, so that might be my ultimate vintage Rado Diastar, like a Diastar alarm with a shield.
That is cool.
Automatic alarm caliber. Yeah, that would be neat. What's next, Armand? What are you looking for?
I kind of have a twofer on this one because I have had a hard time deciding which one I want more. This is one that I have looked at since before I worked in the industry. So this is a long burn. Before I was in the industry, Omega was my favorite company. You know, it's kind of the watch that got me into watches. But the reference 166.066, the Seamaster 200, specifically with the quote-unquote banana dial. So it is a yellow dial with kind of a gray minute track and a, you know, red 20-minute scale on the bezel and a set of sword hands, and it is just cooler than cool. It screams 70s. It has a very...
And that would be tritium lume, too.
It would be, yep. It has a very interesting, you know, borderline bell type case, very just cushion round, just different. I would love that on like a shark mesh bracelet. I've seen it on. It's amazing. You know, I would rock it on a strap. It's just an all around cool watch. And I said this was a two for a Ploprof from the same era. I would. Oh my gosh, do unspeakable things for, because I just absolutely adore the case.
The old Ploprof, the Seamaster 600 Plongeur Professionnel, it is a very small watch. When you actually see it in person, it's so much smaller than you think it's going to be.
The friend of the company, our old master watchmaker, Mr. Mike Michaels, had I believe it might have been in the early 80s, actually, Ploprof, that he bought in horrible condition and restored, and up until the day that we went our separate ways, I told him, I was like, Mike, you ever want to sell that, you call me. I want right of first refusal on that watch.
Yeah, his was really nice too. And part of the problem with old dive watches is so many of them are just trashed.
Because they were used. They were beaten.
They're used in the water and they're never serviced, and they're used until the water finally wins the battle with the case, and then they're thrown away or they're tossed in a drawer with water in them. Mike's was beautiful because it hadn't been decimated on the outside, it wasn't covered in gouging, scratches, and dents, and it hadn't been defiled on the inside either. So these old tool watches, they get put away wet and basically used and driven into the ground, so to speak. So it's like finding a vintage New York City cab. There's not a whole lot of old, like, Checker Marathons still going. And there aren't a lot of old 70s dive watches for the same reason. But when you find one, they are beautiful, easy to wear. And I would even go so far as to say the newer Ploprofs, although they're just as big as you imagine, those are also surprisingly easy to wear because it's a watch that's long down the wrist but not across it.
Especially if you go titanium. I think the titanium has the best configuration in the modern one with the gray dial and orange bezel. I think that configuration's awesome on the shark mesh, and oh my gosh, it's comfortable. It's weird that it's comfortable.
Yeah, definitely. Good way to go. You would not imagine a giant weird-shaped watch with a metal band would be that comfortable, but it is. I would love to see Omega do a bracelet like that, but for a dress watch.
I was watching a video of the Golden Ellipse, the 5738/600R, whatever the current reference is, and the artisanal nature in which they put the bracelet together is gorgeous. /1R. Wow, excuse me. And yes, I can absolutely see like just a high polished, maybe interesting pattern, effectively dressed shark mesh bracelet do well.
Definitely, without a doubt. I think even a Milanese, it could make people take another look at the traditional Griffin Claw constellation, like Western watch collectors who've pretty much sworn off that version of the Connie, might take another look if you would put a nice mesh integration on it. I think that'd be cool.
And I think that type of bracelet, that type of smaller beads of rice, smaller links, is making a comeback. A complicated bracelet is making a comeback.
It's odd to me that we don't see more, obviously the integrated bracelet sports watch genre is now so played out. But what amazed me is through all the iteration, the repetition, the monkey see, monkey do, all of these attempts at a take on that genre, I can't think of too many of them that tried to integrate a mesh bracelet with a Nautilus or Royal Oak style case. And I don't know why, because that would have been worthwhile and really different.
Oh, that would have been really different. I wonder if the monoblock styling of the case would be too juxtaposed to a mesh.
I feel like this is a surmountable engineering challenge.
Yeah, I think so too, because if the Ploprof works, then a Nautilus would work.
Yeah, and I just feel like if you're going to integrate a bracelet and everyone is doing links, at least give a thought to some sort of chainmail.
Tim, I swear, any brand that you work for will be you will be a treat and a service to them. I mean, my goodness gracious, that is such a good idea. And it's also just like nobody ever would think to put a Nautilus on a mesh bracelet. And you're right, it is like this would take them probably a couple years to perfect, to make Patek. But it would be insane. It would be so interesting. And it would also, you put it in an ultra thin case. You make it a no complication, a literal time only, maybe a similar to that of like the 3700 in terms of no sub-seconds. You throw a date on, maybe keep it a little dressier, no date, but put it on a thin mesh bracelet and make it ultra thin. That's an awesome idea.
Yeah, I would love to see it happen. So we're talking about, I guess, dream watches and shopping list watches. This is me saying I'm shopping for a watch not yet made. So that ties it back up to our topic. Okay, so say some nice things about Omega, because we're saying nice things about brands here. Let's go with the gray side of the moon. I love the gray side, and just as I have less and less tolerance for scratches, hard metal and a Rado Diastar is one way to do that, but I like the gray side, not just because it's ceramic, but because it has everything going for it and it is ceramic. So you've got this lovely take on ceramic in gray, which to me feels more original and nuanced than black. So the dark side was great, but everyone and their brother did black ceramic. I would say probably 95% of the ceramic watches ever made were black ceramic.
And the gray ceramic is like your liquid Terminator. I mean, it is a mercury color.
Yeah,
you know,
full-blown
it's
T1000.
Very,
Exactly.
very cool. I think I still prefer the black ceramic just because I don't have a black, like an all black watch in my collection. I think that's a bit of an itch I want to scratch. But the gray is infinitely more wearable in my opinion, and it also it wears metallic. It doesn't wear ceramic. It wears very metallic in a really good way. And I mean, you know,
It does. They've got the same satination and polishing you'd find on the metal. They didn't go with some frosted default finish because they couldn't finish it any other way. It's finished exactly like a metal moon watch. I would also say this. It has a platinum dial. A frosted, grained...
media blasted platinum
dial.
And it's so rich. It's so deep. This is one of the best Omega dials out there. And I don't think it gets, the credit it deserves. I mean, you look at where gray sides trade on the secondary market, and it's like you can find a great gray side of the moon for sub $10,000 all day, every day, and you get immense value from the watch, immense wearability, and something interesting.
And I would also say this, because Omega is plugged into the Swatch Group and companies like Commodore that make, jewels and ceramic and hard parts on cases, Omega's got a full ceramic pin buckle on the gray side.
Yeah.
It's there on the dark side too if you get it, but to have a pin buckle, which is a part most companies will not issue in ceramic, that really changes things. Because if you think where the buckle is on your ceramic watch, it's underneath your wrist. It's where it's going to take a beating when you're moving your hands across your desk or your computer. It's going to get savaged. And a lot of companies will use some sort of PVD steel or titanium buckle on the ceramic watch because they can't make a durable pin buckle. Those little parts are too hard for them to execute, or their supplier makes it too expensive. But with Omega, for a reasonable price, you get the full ceramic pin buckle. And so the most vulnerable part of your watch is just as hardened against marks as the ceramic case itself.
While we're talking about things that we wish would happen, I would love to see Omega make a ceramic bracelet for this watch.
I would too. I would
It would
love
be
to see
so
that.
cool.
I don't even know what form that would take. I think it would be interesting if it didn't look exactly like a moonwatch bracelet.
I think so too. I think they could do something different with it and make it, integrate to the case in an interesting way and have an opportunity for a different design. I mean, hold on. Super outlandish. Imagine all right, Speed Sonic Lobster bracelet and ceramic.
Oh yeah, but you need the rest. You need the rest of the watch.
You
That's
do.
the thing,
You do.
yeah.
That's the problem. But something, stacked like scales like that would be funky.
That would be really, really cool. And Omega, you're on notice for two things as far as I'm concerned. One, full ceramic bracelet for a ceramic watch. Two, 42 millimeter moonwatch case in ceramic.
Yes.
Because the gray side, the dark side, the white side, the blue side, they're all the 44.25. They wear good for their size. They wear well, but they're still big, and they're all thick. And I'm going to put that on my list with thinner Omega watches. That's what I want. I want a full ceramic bracelet. I want a 42 millimeter ceramic moon watch, and I want you to really think about what comes after the 8900 series movements and their derivatives. You need thinner watches.
Oh my gosh, yes. Absolutely. That is a non-starter conversation. The calibers need to be thinner.
What else is on your horizon?
Outside of the realm of the extraordinary, not a ton. I don't know that I even have... there are certain models that I think, I could pick one of those up. The models that I chose here are pieces that I actively think about, and there's really not much else that I actively think about.
Okay, how about this? What are the gaps in your collection? What's a complication or a style that you want? Without putting a name and a model on it, without putting a brand and a model, what is a gap in your collection that you need to fill?
I want a weird case. I want an asymmetrical case. I want, a Gilbert type case,
Ooh, I got something for you.
something like that.
Cedric Jonaire Abyss with the Chopard 196
I
movement.
love Jonaire. I almost bought one, probably 4 years ago now. It was peak COVID. I almost bought one from a client. And at this point, I wish I had, because I love that case. I think the case is awesome. And I think he is cool, as a watchmaker, watch designer. I think what he's doing is cool. I'm interested.
Yeah, interesting story. Cedric Jonaire, originally a business partner with Jérôme David, he had experience as an artisan with Chopard, and when he left Chopard to create his own company, Chopard let him use the 196 caliber. And this was back when Chopard itself had just launched it.
And that's the swan neck regulator caliber.
Full blown.
Yep.
Michel Parmigiani designed micro rotor, stacked barrels, and I believe maybe even Geneva seal.
It is Geneva seal.
For the Jonaire version. And so the Abyss case is fascinating because a little bit like the Ellipso Curvex of Daniel Roth or the Octa of the octagonal case by Gerald Genta, it was something that was very original. It wasn't a riff on something that others had done previously in watchmaking, and it had a unique shaped faceted sapphire to go with it. It was a dramatic looking thing, but it wasn't too big and it wasn't hard to wear. And what eventually happened is that Jonaire and Davitt had a fallout, and Davitt secured almost all of the assets and trademarks to the point that Jonaire didn't even have the right to use his name on a watch for a couple of years. And the modern day Davitt grew out of that sort of co-opted partnership between Davitt and Jonaire. Jonaire is back on his feet today, but really one of the unsung heroes of independent horology.
There's also
along
just
with
this
Nordzeitmachine. Machine.
There's this whimsy that Jonaire has. I mean, I think it's, it starts with the case design. It goes to the numerals. It goes to the shape of the complications, the shape of the timekeeping. It's I don't equate it to, I actually would equate it kind of to the whimsical nature of some Journe pieces, some Journe text, the kind of different thought out layouts, save for the chronographs, of course.
Like a good example with Journe would be, Journe has a very distinctive typeface used for his dials.
Very.
You remove everything. You could just have those numerals and those hands projected against a wall, and people would know exactly what brand. And Jonaire was like that too. He was a very thoughtful designer. Some versions of the Abyss are big, but most aren't. And it wears surprisingly well, and it's an uncommon thing. So to find one that uses the original Chopard movement, very, very cool. It's one of those instances where, for some reason, a special relationship or particular admiration, a company allows a movement to be used as a customer caliber almost exclusively for one dude or one brand. Mm-hmm. The same thing happened with Chanel, with the Autologerie version of the J12 with the Audemars Piguet 3120 caliber, and no one ever again got to use that movement for their own watch as a customer caliber. It's just one of those things you don't see that often. Or Ludwig Oxlin using Ulysse Nardin calibers these days, base calibers. Yeah.
What are the gaps that you're hoping to fill at some point?
I need a perpetual calendar because I love the complication, but I'm less certain about which one.
I was just going to say, who is the perpetual calendar to you?
To me, there are two different threads. One, glorious tradition, which is Patek Philippe, very important to them. On the other hand, there's innovation, which is something that benefits the perpetual calendar from a functional and serviceable basis in a big way. So Patek Philippe, for me, it would be the 5236P, and it would be the 010, the salmon dial inline perpetual calendar. Super easy to read the time, super easy to read the calendar system. Expensive. I believe its retail price is over $140,000. Less used, but doesn't lose a ton of value. It's not like you're getting a bargain. You're still paying six figures.
148,331 as of this recording today.
I think you can get a blue dial one used for maybe around 100, maybe a little bit
about
under.
100. Yep.
So, but I want the salmon dial because I think it's a better watch if you're interested in telling time. White gold hands, blackened. White gold indices, blackened on a salmon dial. The original version with the blue dial, it was easy to read the calendar, not easy to read the time. For me, that's beautiful. A big size micro rotor movement, 34 millimeters, 31-260, a unique perpetual calendar interface with the inline display, a beautiful case drawn straight from Patek history with the 3448 and the 3450. Everything about this watch, the case, the dial, the movement, it's the trifecta. It's hard to be drawn to all three on a given watch, but in that instance, I am. But very expensive. So I also love Moser, and I'm a Moser owner. So Moser's system, designed by Andreas Streller, is about as friendly as they get. Bidirectional, there's no danger zone day or night. You can adjust it any way you like. It's a very smart system. It's easy to read. It doesn't crowd the dial. It's super durable. And it's paired with a 7-day movement that runs for more like 9. I would want that in the form of the blue enamel with the aqua blue, the enamel on the hammered white gold base in the tantalum case. I really like that. Now we're talking a watch that retails in the 80s, used even less. So that's a more attainable watch for me. But I also like Ulysse Nardin. And I would say that the Ludwig Axelin calendar was really the first breakthrough in perpetual calendar setting, durability, and friendliness. I would almost say since the very first wristwatch perpetual calendar. Because if you look at the Patek system, it's still Grand Levier, it's still the program wheel. It's a system with 4 different pusher adjusters that Henri Stern would have recognized in his youth. So although the interface with the inline calendar is patented and unique, the mechanism underneath dates back to the pocket watch era. Audemars Piguet's made some breakthroughs in this department recently, but I'm not interested in those watches. I would say, however, that the old caliber 2120 base in the Code 1159 perpetual calendar in white gold with the aventurine dial, even though the movement is archaic, I love it. Perpetual calendar, JLC base, excellent decoration on a level we no longer really associate with series production AP watches, and a white gold Code 1159 case with an aventurine dial. For for me, Ulysse Nardin, I would want something extra. I would want either the original Diver Perpetual and the Aqua Perpetual models, which are smaller diving perpetual calendars with like Flinke lacquer dials, or I would want the Platinum El Toro Perpetual GMT, where I now have a watch that is platinum, a limited edition, a ceramic bezel, a chronometer, 100 meters water resistant, a rubber strap, a dual time, and a bidirectional perpetual calendar. What's not to love? It even fits just.
The rose gold version of that watch was one of the first, it may have been the first watches that I picked up when I was handed my set of keys to the cases on like my first day in retail. And that watch is impressive, and I really wish that it got the notoriety it deserves because it's amazing. It is durable. It is grab and go. It's precious metal. It's high complication. It's a travel watch. And you're right, it does. It's right on the edge of fitting for me too. Roughly a 7-inch wrist, right on the edge, but it does work.
It fits best on the rubber strap. That's the key thing.
Totally agree.
So that's a fun watch. I would love to own that. So between Moser, UN, Patek Philippe, and possibly AP with the white gold Code 1159 Perpetual, that's sort of where my heart is. I could put in an annual calendar, get that done for under $10,000. But to me, a perpetual calendar seems like magic. An annual calendar seems like a machine.
Well put. I like that.
That's how I feel about that. How do we feel about vintage? How do we feel about micro brands? Are micro brands on your radar?
Unpopular opinion time. I'm sorry.
No, let's go for it.
I've had my time with micro brands. I'm over them. There are a lot of micro brands that I like from a distance. I don't think I'll own one anytime soon. I don't think there's anybody that's really jumping out at me in the micro brand space. And I think we cross a Rubicon when we talk about micro brand because I am not including indie in micro brand. Micro brand is smaller and less expensive to me.
Yeah, I think there's a very large divide, Grand Canyon size, between FP Journe and, say, I don't know, pick your favorite Hong Kong-based micro brand using generic tools in a generic factory with a generic design.
No, I mean, you're right. There is a canyon between that, and there's something that I don't know. There's something that micro brands are missing for me, and I can't quite put my finger on it.
To me, they just don't seem special. Like at some point, it's not an occasion to buy a $600 watch.
I'll go a step further than that. They were special in 2012.
Okay, they were special when 7 Friday was the only one doing it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. They were special back then. Now, I'm not calling anybody out directly on this at all, so don't look any deeper into this comment, everybody. But now you have a design for a time-only watch. You go buy a movement, you go buy a case, you put it all together and slap a name on it, and it's boring. It's saying nothing.
And there's a whole industry that caters to making this happen in a few weeks for you.
And very quickly. I mean, they'll give you options. They'll give you options of designs. You will get samples. Like, it's such a ingenuine way of making watches, in my opinion. And I'm not saying that these micro brands start out with like, oh, I'm gonna go make money. It's not saying that at all. It just feels less genuine to me than that of an independent.
I own one micro brand watch, a Zentier, and yes, it is Zentier, not Zentier, I understand, but a Zentier Z6 that was a piece created for the Watch Ho & Co. watch club out of Hong Kong. And the only reason I have that watch...
Oh, that watch is cool. I like these.
It's got the malachite dial, the Schaefer case, the jump hour. It is a Chinese-made watch with a Chinese movement. But I associate it with friends that I made overseas, and that watch makes me think of them. And that is the meaning that makes it meaningful to me. It is not that that watch was a grail or a goal or marked a milestone in my life. It's something I associate with people that I like a lot. That's the reason I have that watch.
I like that. That makes sense. That's spot on. That is, if you buy a micro brand with a friend, that's a buddy watch. I love that. That's fun. That's easy. To take them seriously is what bothers me, I think.
And here's where I say, okay, it's not just a matter of budget. You say, well, Tim, I don't have enough money to buy a Debitoon. Well, that's fine. For most of my life, neither did I. And I mean, here's the thing. For the same amount of money you're going to spend on that micro brand, there's a million cool old things that are 60, 50, 40 years old that you can go buy from the etc. drawer at your local jeweler. I got my first Accutron for $400, 1974 Swiss made, still works to this day. A genuine vintage Accutron Space View watch. Longines Ultrachron, you can buy them for a few $100, maybe 1,000 tops. Old Gerard Perregaux Gyromatics, like there's that, and those old Rado Diastars for a few $100. Like these are things that have stood the test of time for the same money.
And you know what all these things, including micro brands, have in common?
What is that?
In a few years, when you go to service it, you're not going to send it to the brand. You're going to take it to an independent watchmaker.
Yeah, I would even go so far as to say I'm a little bit worried. I've taken apart some Chinese movements, and I marveled at the people who originally put them together, assuming they are human, because many of these things did not appear designed to be taken apart and reassembled.
Well, that's a really good point too, because we're talking about mass-produced movements. We're talking about really unrefined movements, unfinished movements, and the potential of the unserviceability.
There may not be tools, there may not be parts. The movement holder, if this was made by a person, is only owned by people in China who will not share. Mm-hmm. And you're talking about watches that don't cost that much more than a Swatch System 51, which is glued shut and unserviceable.
Yeah.
And you're not that far removed from a System 51 with some of these really low-dollar mechanical micro brands.
And when you're talking about that, you're talking 3 and 4x the price of a simple mechanical Seiko that is serviceable.
I would say for me, the floor on a new watch, we're not talking about these old watches pulled out of the corners of jewelers, but for a new watch, for me, the floor is something like a Studio Underdog with like a Swiss movement or a Miyota-powered Max Booster Mad Edition.
Yep, I can see that. There's the footing for the brand is there. Yeah, I can definitely see that.
The movement is, like a Miyota 9015 or something like that.
There's a billion of them.
Yeah, you can service that. That's not a one and done throwaway mechanical movement. It's very humble, but it can be serviced.
Yeah.
So look, guys, if you love micro brands, we don't mean to slam you, but this is our personal wish lists. And if I ask Armand, like, why don't you have a micro brand on your list, or do you? He's going to give me the reason why he doesn't. And that might feel raw and a square blow to those who are really into these things, and we're not slamming you. We're just explaining why it doesn't connect with us.
Not at all slamming. I actually even appreciate micro brands in the sense of who they get into the industry and how they kind of are a gateway drug to the rest of the industry for people. Because a lot of times they do advertise in this niche, kind of hip, cool way in different places. And they do grab people from places you might not get other watch enthusiasts. So for that, I think they're fantastic and, a part of the community.
I would also say this, guys. Look, see it yourself. There is a Super Bowl for this sort of thing, and it's called Wind Up in New York. Mm-hmm. So look it up, go, take a look, meet the people, see if you like it. I do know people in the micro brand space who seem to like the people behind the brands so much, that they buy on that basis.
Yeah.
Not really because these things are exclusive or because they're engineered like nothing else or even enduring products. They make friends. They go to that show and they have fun.
And the people are cool. You know, it is fun to go to Wind Up. It's cool to see the big Oris bear, you know?
Yeah, and if you don't like that sort of thing, then for you, there's Watch Time New York. That's where all the expensive stuff is. One big happy city of watches. Okay, so I'm just about done with my list. I think that the Moser Tantalum Enamel Dial Perpetual Calendar would be like my next big score. And I think, reasonably speaking, the next thing on my radar is probably going to be like a titanium Gerald Genta Arena Sport by Retro. So that's sort of where I'm heading right now. That or maybe a 50 Fathoms, because a luxury diver sort of intrigues me. And the 50 is now in a size where I can buy it without reservations. I like the 5010, guys, and I don't mind the dial disc. Okay. So, Armand, where can people find us?
You can find me via email at armand@the1916company.com or via Instagram at it's me, Armand.
And you can direct your microbrand loving hate to Tim_Masso on Instagram. And until next time, time out.